the major theme here for the forecast, and it's one of those hit in the head with a sledgehammer type of thing. We're looking at it in essence at an extended period of threat for widespread showers and thunderstorms and locally heavy rain. Probably the most widespread heavy rain event we've seen, well, certainly this season, and we'd have to go back a ways. And what you see here, I'm going to show this again because it's something we don't see very often. But all these red colors here in Michigan are precipitation potential here for the next week. Most of this is forecasted projected to fall over the next 3 days. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. So again, the other news, of course, is that we've had in many parts of the state, including some of the driest parts of the state, saw significant and heavy rainfall here over the last week. And I want to talk a little bit about that. But as so often happens, as Mother Nature evens itself out or the statistics even out, we did have a significant severe weather outbreak, unfortunately, on Sunday evening. That's what you see here. The blue triangles here, or the blue markers, are reports to the National Weather Service of wind damage. The red circles are tornado touchdowns. And the greens are a little bit harder to see, are reports of large hail. And the interesting thing is with this, you can see a family or cluster of thunderstorms that really started over in east central Iowa, northwest Illinois, and then moved to the east across to the Chicago area, and then into extreme southern lower Michigan, northern Indiana, and northwest Ohio. Again, most of this took place Sunday evening. There were a number of reports of large and damaging hail, 2 inches or larger. I did see one report of 4-inch hail. I haven't seen images of that or validation of that, but again, those are damaging by any stretch of the imagination. And there was at least one tornado touchdown near Blissfield here Sunday evening. So again, with these rainfall, we usually sometimes do get the severe weather, but it was confined primarily to the southern 2 tiers of counties. Not to be outdone in a very, very unusual season, and I think several people have brought that up in recent times here, how unusual this growing season has been. We also had, following one of the features or one of the reasons for that severe weather outbreak was a very unusually strong troughing feature, upper air feature that moved into the upper Midwest here earlier this week. And it brought us some essentially early fall weather. And what you're looking at here are minimum temperatures on Tuesday morning. And amazingly, we saw some freezing. Well, we saw frost in many parts of the state. And this is the day after summer solstice, which very, very, very unusual, very, very rare. We're still trying to put the historical significance on this, but you can see an area up here in the interior northern lower, and then portions of interior eastern upper Michigan where we actually had freezing temperatures, again, the third week of June. And some of these will be probably records for the date, but it's not, it was the upper air feature, very, very cold air aloft that led to this, but also the fact that it's so dry. The landscape is dry, and we typically lose or have a few degrees cooler minimum temperatures when we do have dry landscapes. And so the two of those combined to lead to something very, very, very rare to see. Most of the states saw just a cold morning with temperatures in the upper 30s, low 40s. But again, there actually was some frost and or freezing temperatures, and may have been in your neck of the woods. Maybe the biggest of, I guess, weather development, though, here, again, was the widespread rainfall across most of the southern half of lower Michigan, which you see here on the right-hand side. Areas along the I-94 corridor, in some cases, more than 5 inches of rain were reported. The yellow color here is more than at least 2 inches, but you can see embedded in there, again, right along I-94, some areas that did better than that. There was also fairly widespread significant rainfall across western and central upper Michigan, or actually across a lot of the UP, but it's also important to note that most of the northern lower remained less drier than normal, with less than half an inch reported. So it depended on where you were, but the rainfall that fell, especially across southern Michigan here late last week or over the weekend, and then on Sunday, the second event, was the most widespread they've seen so far, not just in the growing season, but this entire calendar year. So big change from where we've been, obviously stuck in a drier than normal pattern for some time. Temperatures, before I forget, I did not to belittle those or minimize those, but Given the cool weather of this week, early this week, most of them 2 to as much as 5 degrees below normal. But our degree day totals for the season still remain a few calendar days ahead of normal. So we lost a little bit of the surplus we had last week, but we're still a little bit ahead in most locations. Soil moisture, I wanted to show this. This is the plant available soil moisture in the top 3 feet of the profile here on the left. It doesn't look very different from what we've seen over the past few weeks. It's lower than what it should be in most areas of the state, especially across lower Michigan. But on the right-hand side, more interestingly, you can see here the relative change in the same variable from 1 week to the next. And note here down in the southern, roughly third of lower Michigan, lots of greens and blues. We've added water back, or plant available water back to the profile. One of the problems when you get 4 inches of rain, of course, is does all of it infiltrate? And it depends on the soil type and the characteristics for infiltration. You can't probably get all of it, but the more of it you can get into the profile, the better. Northern lower Michigan, in contrast, you see here more browns. We lost several percent more of the profile, again, relative to normal. So it just, again, location depends, or it depended a great deal on location. Historically, I have one graphic here. This is accumulated daily precipitation at Kalamazoo. At the airport, beginning on the 1st of January, the calendar year. The green is the actual observed total. The brown is the normal. And you can see here how much of this deficit, which was more than, in this case, more than 7 inches here just a week ago, how much difference this made. And you can see we took a big bite out of that deficit. We're still behind long-term, but we're much closer now where we were, again, more than 7 inches behind. And now we're less than 3.5 inches behind. And with a forecast of more to come, probably look even better, at least, again, relative to the normal. So yes, the deficits are still there, but we took a significant chunk out. As we look ahead here, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are looking at a fairly significant rainfall event here. And maybe for Jamie, maybe a disease event with long periods of high humidity and certainly the threat of precipitation. But what I want to start with, this is a variable we don't look at very often, which is precipitable water, how much water vapor is in the atmosphere. And you also see winds here, low-level winds, and what we have essentially taking place. This is as of 8 o'clock this morning, but these greens here are high, and it's a subtropical air mass right out of the Gulf of Mexico. And if you look at the wind barbs here, you can see the flow here just off of the Gulf, up through the lower Mississippi Valley, up into the upper Midwest, aimed right at the Great Lakes region. And the issue with this particular weather system, and what we're likely to see here, is nothing is taking place quickly. All of this water vapor is streaming up towards us, and it will be the raw material for a lot of precipitation. And so we are looking at, again, a prolonged period threat of showers and thunderstorms, and not just regular garden variety, but showers and thunderstorms that will have, because of all this water vapor, heavy rainfall totals possible over an extended period. So today, here looking at the weather map, and you're going to see a 48-hour progression here. There's very little change expected in the surface features. We've got a complex, stalled out or very slow-moving set of frontal boundaries here off to our north and west. Some low pressure forming out over the central Great Plains, and it isn't going to change much over the next couple of days. Precipitation will develop and begin down in the lower left-hand corner. You can see it's already moved into western upper Michigan, but it's going to gradually spread southeastward here during the day today and overnight tonight, and probably reach the southeastern part of the state by the early morning hours. So to give you an idea of time frame, we now have return flow. The winds are going to shift out of the south. It will be several degrees warmer today. And this today might be about the warmest day, especially for the southern part of the state that we see over the next several, but near seasonable temperatures are expected, but just a continuing threat. It will be periods of showers and thunderstorms, especially overnight tonight. We may get a little bit of a break tomorrow morning, and then once again, late tomorrow into early Saturday, continuing Saturday and into Sunday. So again, about a 3-day period. And after that, step through here to tomorrow morning. Again, the weather map looks almost the same, other than higher chances or probabilities of precipitation. And here finally is Saturday morning. Again, very little change. The upper air flow, the steering currents are parallel to the features on the surface. They're just not moving very quickly. All that water vapor, tropical air is still there with a continuing threat for showers and thunderstorms. So again, back to the same map here, we are looking at widespread, probably 1 to 3 inch totals. And in contrast to a lot of what we've seen so far this growing season, it will be widespread with the possible exception of portions of western upper Michigan. Even in northern areas of the lower that have been missed by recent rainfall, we'll see significant rainfall with this one. We could see some spots, depending on which thunderstorm they get underneath, that pick up 4 or even 5 inches of rain. So unfortunately, that's enough to cause problems, runoff, maybe even some flooding, which again seems ironic to talk about after being in a drought situation for some time. But this is a potentially a fairly large event, and widespread coverage is expected before everything starts to wind down by the beginning of next week. But even next week, we will still have a continuing threat of scattered showers on a daily basis into probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Potential evapotranspiration rates here are going to be limited or a little bit less than what we have seen in recent weeks, generally on the order of about 13 to 15 hundredths per day. Again, depending on location, a little bit less in the north than in the south, but not as high as what we have seen earlier. Moving finally here into the ahead, the medium and long range, a couple of themes, but one major one that's showing up. If you look at the jet stream pattern here, expected for the 6 to 10 day time frame, very similar outlook, for the 8 to 14 day time frame. Massive ridge, western part of the U.S., a trend to the east, and essentially what this suggests is gradual return of warmer than normal weather for the upper Midwest and for Michigan. That's a consistent theme. We've seen that now for several days or more. It shows up here a little bit here. Precip is harder to tell. You can see that Michigan is in between two areas, one of what's likely to be drier than normal. And by the way, thinking on this in a bigger picture, that drier than normal forecast to our west for the northern plains and up into the upper Midwest, that's that's certainly it's a negative thing. There are serious problems, of course, with drought there as well. And there it is forecast to continue, or unfortunately to persist. Contrast that with areas to our south and to our east, where above normal precipitation is forecast. So Michigan could be really on either side of this. And that looks to be the case here for at least the first half or so of July. But I think the consistent message is it's going to warm back up again. In our long lead outlooks, this is the new ensemble issued last Thursday from the Climate Prediction Center for the month of July. And for really the second half of the summer, they both favor warmer than normal mean temperatures. You can see that for much of the region. Precipitation, very similar to what you just saw in those medium range outlooks. Again, drier than normal to our west, wetter than normal to our south. So again, no real direction at this point in time. But again, I think probably the take home is it does suggest that we're going to go back up above normal probably in early July. So summarizing here again, looking at an extended threat of heavy rain. Some areas may see really heavy rain and even some flooding possible. It's going to put a more dent, take more of that precipitation deficit away in many parts of the state and change things significantly here from where we were just a couple of weeks ago. So there's some positive, but there's always, again, a give and take with these things, are positive and negative. I think in some areas probably we'll see enough rainfall to cause some runoff or some concerns with flooding. And as you just saw, then moving ahead, maybe a little bit less in the way of precipitation, but probably warmer weather is on the way. And I'll wrap up with that and move ahead here and remind you about next week's virtual breakfast here. This one on the 1st of July. We'll be moving into a new month and hope you can join us. We'll have Dr. Dean Boss, who's our MSU Extension cover crop specialist. And good timing here, going to be talking about cover crops coming up after wheat, which of course, moving here ahead through that season. So don't miss that. That's again next week, a week from today, Thursday, the 1st of July. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Phil.